Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Peabody City Council Subcommittee on Legal Affairs. Tonight, we have two items on the agenda. One is a continuation of our last Legal Affairs Subcommittee meeting on a request for proposals for 212 and 16 Washington Street, and also polling location changes and any other matters properly before the committee if time permits. Joining us tonight are all of the committee members: Councilor Sasslaw, Councilor McGinn, Councilor Turco, Councilor Rossignol, and myself as chair. Also joining us is Councilor Manning Martin, Councilor Charist, Councilor Welton, Councilor Matsoulis, and Council President O'Neill. We're also being joined for the first item is we're being joined by Attorney Don Kahn, His Honor the Mayor, Dan Doucette, the purchasing agent, and the respondent to the actual RFP, Mr. Greeley, and his attorney, Jason Panos. Just to follow up on the last, where we stand on this particular item, in our packets, there was the last motion that came out of the committee last week was a motion to was a motion to have Councilor McGinn submit a motion in writing that all parties could, and all members of the council could read and research and be prepared for today's meeting. Before we introduce that particular item, I just wanted to ask if any members of the committee had anything else they wanted to bring up from the last committee meeting. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, at the last Legal Affairs Committee meeting, I put forward a motion to authorize the mayor to enter into a PS purchase and sales agreement with Mr. Greeley. From my perspective, there's a lot of things about this RFP response that make it desirable to the city and the community, and those include the use, the design, the restoration and preservation of historically significant properties, limitation on residential density, compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood, the protection of a tree that's valued by the community, and a reasonable timeline to accomplish the proposal. These factors, along with protecting the city's rights under possible future scenarios, are the reason the city is willing to take this financial approach and the level of risk with these properties, which the mayor mentioned in his comments at the last meeting. These factors were important to the Response Review Committee. They're important to a number of other councilors, based on the comments that were made at the last Legal Affairs meeting. I think they're important to the mayor, based on the fact that they were included in the RFP in the first place, and based on his comments publicly. And they're also very important to me as the ward councilor. The RFP included language that addressed all of these important factors, which I copied into the motion that I made at the last Legal Affairs meeting so that nothing would get lost as this process advances. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, I withdrew that motion because there needed to be a comfort level that there was not any deviation from the RFP. And so to ensure that comfort level, I have altered the motion in form, but not in substance. Rather than restating the RFP language in the motion I'm put forward, which is included in the package, provides references back to the RFP text. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make that motion this evening so that the process can advance to the next stage, and I thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Just for a point of order on how we'll proceed is, if there's nothing else that anybody wants to add, Councilor McGinn can make his motion. All councilors, I'll give the committee their opportunity to debate if they have anything they want to debate on the motion, and then any input or discussion from any other councilors. Obviously, we'll be voting on this, so the public is aware at our next council meeting from a report of committee on Thursday. Is there anything else any other councilors want to make before Councilor McGinn makes the motion? Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to authorize the mayor to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with Edward Greeley, the buyer, for the properties located at 2, 12, and 16 Washington Street for the sum of $751,000, with a requirement that a number of items from the request for proposal document titled Request for Proposal Sale of Washington and Main Street Gateway Properties, February 2021, the RFP, are memorialized in a manner which is binding on the buyer or the buyer's successors. These RFP items are the language in RFP Section 1, Paragraph 3, RFP Section 2, Subsection C, Paragraphs 4, 6, 7, and 8, RFP Section 2, Subsection F, Paragraph 3, RFP Section 2, Subsection G, Paragraph 1, RFP Section Roman numeral 4, Subsection B, Item 1. Nothing in this motion shall be construed to limit the mayor from including other RFP items. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Any councilors within the committee have any comment or discussion on the motion? I have one. Mr. Greeley, I know you're represented by Attorney Panos, so either you or Attorney Panos can answer this. Have you had an opportunity to review this particular language, and is it what you would expect, or do you have any issue with it?
Yes, I have reviewed it.
Mr. Greeley? Yep, you have read
Hello?
it? Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, I've read it, and I have no issue with it, Council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Greeley. Any other members of the committee have any comment on the motion? Any members of the council here have any comment on the motion? Members of the council? Mr. Mayor, do you have any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke at length at the last meeting, and just very happy to move forward. I think everybody knows how I feel about this project, this vision, and I'm really excited to take the next step and hopefully get that authorization tonight and on Thursday night. I think this is a big win for the city of Peabody and our downtown efforts. So I'm just happy to move forward and partner with Ed Greeley on this work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any comments? Debate? Seeing none, we'll get a roll call vote on Councilor McGinn's motion.
Councilor Sasslaw?
Yes.
McGinn?
Yes.
Turco?
Yes.
Rozignol?
Yes.
Melville?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Excellent. We're going to move on to our next order of business, which is polling location changes. Joining us for this discussion we have the mayor, our city solicitor, Don Kahn, Board of Registrars members, Judy Blodgett and Joel Brenner. I really appreciate their time this evening and what they do for the city of Peabody. Just to follow up on this particular, this has come up a few times since this year on the council as part of motions, orders, and resolutions. One of the, and our city clerk will discuss this in her comments, but one of the issues is that we're in a position where we might not be able to use polling places that we used prior to from 2019 and before that time for previous elections, due to the fact that they're private property, and many of those locations do not conform to the Secretary of State's standards for elections right now. This has been brought up by our city clerk. One of the reasons we want to talk about this now is so that there's an enormous amount of logistics that go into place in organizing schedules for these buildings, and the city clerk organizing staff to operate these elections at these locations. So I'd ask the city clerk to give us a brief synopsis of the current situation, and we can discuss it from there.
Thank you, Councilor. So in preparation for our 2021 municipal elections, we would like to solidify our polling location changes. We don't know when the legislature will take up legislation that will affect our fall elections, although it is anticipated that COVID-19 social distancing requirements will continue. We believe the 2020 polling locations worked extremely well, consolidating all of the precincts from a ward into one location. especially given the fact that mail-in voting and early voting reduce the number of voters voting on Election Day. It is expected that the state legislature will allow cities and towns the options of mail-in voting and early voting options for not only this coming year, but for all future elections, which will help to alleviate the number of in-person voters on Election Day in these new polling locations. Voters will not get a postcard like they did in the last election. They will have to actually notify the city clerk's office for an application, and we will mail them out an application. Once we receive it, then we'll log it in the same way we did last time and send them a ballot. We received a lot of positive comments, actually only positive comments for our polling locations this past year. And we think that this will be a very successful change. If the City Council does choose to make this change pursuant to MGL Chapter 54, Section 24, we will be notifying all voters, except for Brooksby Village, because they're not going to change at all, by mail. And that's about it. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Danforth. Additional to that, I think it's important to note that there's going to this is the redistricting process is about to begin with the census. Both Allison and I were on a conference call with the Secretary of State's office. Was it last Wednesday? Where they were discussing the census and redistricting. So the key point to any time we're updating polling locations is, you hear people say, oh, this is permanent. It's only permanent until we decide it's not. So if there should be an issue with the location or through the redistricting process, we find that something doesn't make sense, we as a council have the ability to address that through the issues that come from the Board of Registrars or from the voters themselves. And Allison has, in her office, have made it clear that they have not gotten any negative response from the 2020 election in those locations. So this is to give them the opportunity for the logistical changes that they need to make and the time frame to make those. With that being said, we have members of the Board of Registrars. I was not anticipating them having to add anything to Allison's, but they're here for questions. Or if they want to add any comments or their opinions, be happy to hear from them. With that being said, do any members of the committee have any questions or comments? Any members of the committee? Oh, Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you, Chairman Melville. I just think it speaks volumes, and I had the opportunity to speak to Clerk Danforth, that she did not have, as you said, not one complaint about last year's election cycle and how everything went. So I think that speaks volumes, and her office did an incredible job, and I'm very comfortable with the recommendations she has made to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sasslaw. Councilor Turco.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what we all said after the 2020 elections, the Board of Registrars, the city clerk, the election workers all did a phenomenal job. I think there was some fodder on social media about residents being reluctant, but I think in the end, everybody realized that it worked out wonderfully. It was simplified for everybody. Nobody had to search for locations. So I would be in favor of these locations, with one caveat. You may have one or more primaries. The school district, some of these are school buildings, i.e. the high school in Ward 5. What do we do on primary day? Because I don't believe that they have that day off. And that would be a question, I guess, Mr. Chairman, through you to His Honor the Mayor. Mayor, are you aware of the school schedule? Has that already been put out for next year?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Council and Councilor. And yes, right now, my understanding is that the primary day is full school on that day. So, yeah, I think we may have to have a discussion about that, and I certainly want to make sure that we loop in the school committee members. I think they're well aware of how it went last year and things, but certainly want to keep them involved. But as of right now, to answer the specific question from Councilor Turco, is that date is a full day of school right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So, you know, other than that we need to work out the logistics of, I think this is a great plan. I think it worked very well last year, and I would be in favor of it.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Any other members of the committee? Councilor Rosenau?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you again to the mayor, just regarding the schools. Right now, where the students are in the schools, at the end of the voting day, will each of the schools be terminally clean prior to the students coming back the following day?
Hi, Counselor, and yeah, I know we have a schedule right now. I don't know the schedule for each individual school, but I know there's multiple cleanings a week. But certainly, I think that's just part of the logistics we can work out to make sure there's appropriate cleaning following the election. I think that's definitely something that we can have planned and have ready for the election.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rosenau. Any other members of the committee? Any other councilors? Any comments from any other councilors? Mr. Mayor, did you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And no, nothing to add. I thought it worked very well last year. I think Allison and her team did a terrific job under very difficult circumstances. I want to thank our electors, the Board of Electors for their work. And I just want to make sure that the school committee is involved when we take the next step. And they're aware of what the plan is and how this is all going to work. But I think I'm very comfortable with the plan moving forward, and anything we could do to make sure that we have another successful election year. I'm happy to help out in any way I can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Rosenau?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to be it ordered by the City Council of the City of Peabody that in accordance with the provision of Chapter 54, Section 24 of the Massachusetts General Laws, the following shall be the polling locations in the City of Peabody for all future elections effective in the year of 2021. Ward 1, Precinct 1, Brown School, 150 Lynn Street. Mr. Chair, would you like me to read each one of these?
I think for the record, we should.
Thank you. Ward 1, Precinct 2, Brown School, 150 Lynn Street. Ward 1, Precinct 3, Brown School, 150 Lynn Street. Ward 2, Precinct 1, Welch School, 50 Swampscott Ave. Ward 2, Precinct 2, Welch School, 50 Swampscott Ave. Ward 2, Precinct 3, Welch School, 50 Swampscott Ave. Ward 3, Precinct 1, Terrigian Center, 75 Rear Central Street. Ward 3, Precinct 2, Terrigian Center, 75 Rear Central Street. Ward 3, Precinct 3, Terrigian Center, 75 Rear Central Street. Ward 4, Precinct 1, Higgins Middle School, 85 Perkins Street. Ward 4, Precinct 2, Higgins Middle School, 85 Perkins Street. Ward 4, Precinct 3, Higgins Middle School, 85 Perkins Street. Ward 4, Precinct 3A, Macintosh Clubhouse, 300 Brooksby Village Drive, first floor. Ward 5, Precinct 1, Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, 485 Lowell Street. Ward 5, Precinct 2, Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, 485 Lowell Street. Ward 5, Precinct 3, Peabody Veterans Memorial High School, 485 Lowell Street. Ward 6, Precinct 1, Burke School, 127 Birch Street. Ward 6, Precinct 2, Burke School, 127 Birch Street. Ward 6, Precinct 3, Burke School, 127 Birch Street. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Rosenau. You all heard the motion. Any debate or comment on the motion? My only comment is I think this is fantastic that we're doing this now, and I appreciate all the hard work that our clerk and the office do, and I look forward to another successful election on behalf of what you guys do. Thank you. And roll call vote on the motion.
Counselor Saslow,
Yes.
McGinn,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much to the committee. That is all that we had on the agenda this evening. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Oh, Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I could remind this Councilor Charest on Thursday night, but I'll say it tonight. Just on behalf of what the mayor said about further involving the school committee, maybe if Ed, if you could set up the joint committee, the council, school committee, then we could discuss it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. I think that this will not be the last discussion on elections between now and with the legislature taking action. What we're doing tonight is to free up Allison so that we can have those logistical conversations now instead of August, when we would be up against it. So I think this is a very forward-thinking move, and I think the discussions on this will continue, and I'm sure that the mayor will do whatever he can for the logistical support for the school system on this. Councilman McGinn?
Move to adjourn?
All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.